All right, just sitting back, settling into a comfortable posture. And you can close your eyes or just lower your gaze. Just having a sense of the body settling and softening. And relaxing any points of tension. Typically, we might find the jaw to be tight. See if that's the case and see if you can relax that. And then letting that movement go also with the eyes and the forehead so your face is soft. So interesting just to see how we get tension in our face, what that expresses, what emotions that's coming out of. And see if just relaxing in that way affects your mental state. If you can feel a kind of release that begins. And softening the belly, another place we tend to tighten. You can let the belly expand, let a breath move deeply into the belly. And the shoulders releasing. And if it's manageable to be very still, and in that stillness to feel the energy of the body, the life of the body, whether it's the pulse of the blood or the charge of the nervous system, the sensations of warmth or coolness you feel, weight or lightness. When we tune in to the body, we discover this whole world of sensation that's usually overlooked. What we can also pick up is the way that these sensations and feelings can also be connected to our emotional life. So as we turn the attention to the mood, we see that there's really just a very slight, very narrow bridge between the things we call sensations in the body and the things we call feelings. The two easily blend together. The breath can be that bridge between the two. So as we breathe, we feel the breath itself. There's also an opening that allows the feelings of mood and emotion to open, to give them space, to allow ourselves to really be intimate with those feelings, things that we often either ignore or try to suppress. When we're asked, how do you feel? Can we give an honest response to that? Whether we tell others the truth or not, it's important that we know for ourselves how we feel, that we are both aware of our feelings and accepting. This doesn't mean that we don't try to bring more pleasant feelings into the mind, into the heart. We just don't do that with a sense of grasping or aversion, but rather a gentle cultivation, kindness. The breath gives us a refuge and a a place to touch down. It's more neutral so that we don't have to keep ourselves kind of submerged in feelings. We can step out when it feels like we need that space. Or we can just allow in as much as feels comfortable, manageable right now. Even with this effort to be with the breath and to be with felt experience, often the most persistent thing is the intrusion of thought. Or the mind wanders, or we get absorbed in a daydream, some plan or calculation, judgment. At some point, we realize we've lost touch with the body and the breath. Maybe after just a few moments, or it might be quite some time. Once we're lost, there's no sort of easy way to get back. It just seems to happen on its own. In that moment of realizing that the mind has wandered, we really accept that, acknowledge that, and then gently come back to the breath, back into the body and the felt experience. We don't need to add any commentary or judgment, analysis. Just let go. Come back to that simple felt experience in the present moment. Again, welcome everyone. I am Kevin Griffin. This is, I guess we would call a class that started on March 13th, 2020 and has persisted twice a week, Tuesday mornings and Friday evenings ever since. And, one of my themes was pretty strong in that guided meditation, which is trying to be aware of your mood or emotion. Those are the two terms I usually use, which are not very precise terms, but hard. Well, I guess they're fairly precise terms, but I think they're hard to identify what those are when it comes to meditation. And I kind of I wonder what anybody does with that instruction. Is that like something that works for people? I sort of just breezily give these instructions each time, but don't really ask for like feedback about how that lands for people. So I'd actually be really interested to hear if anybody has anything to say about that. Maybe you didn't notice that I say that like almost every time I teach meditation. Go ahead, Abigail.
Thank you for asking. As we've said before, I zone in and out of what you're saying just as much as I do in and out of the breath.
Yeah.
But to have your voice there provides a thread of concentration, or a thread of concentration, a point of reference, like the breath. It's kind of like the breath.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, you'll say, "Come back to the breath," just at exactly the moment that I need to hear it. So I did think at one point today, my goodness, he's talking a lot. But but you did go on. You talked a little bit more than you usually do.
I did, yeah.
And it wasn't like, oh, that's awful, he talked too much. It's just like he is talking a lot.
It's okay.
But it's partly because it's you and it's your voice. It's very grounding for me, and I appreciate it tremendously. And every once in a while I learn something, but that's rare.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that makes sense to me, that it's more just like the voice rather than the words precisely. Yeah. So it's, I mean, maybe, but I'd be interested if other people have anything to comment on that.
Hi, it's Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
I am always amazed by the lightning speed at which I can have one tiny thought and all of a sudden I'm completely somewhere else. Yeah. And I did that. I shifted between gratitude for this group, seems normal, to thinking about what I have locked in my safe. And it's like, how did I go there so quickly? And I'll track backward to see what the thought links were. And right after I went through that process, you made a comment about letting our mind wander and coming back. And it was so reassuring to me that I'm not nuts. I mean, I know this happens to everybody, but just to hear it in that moment right after it happened for me, made it okay. It made it like a little moment for me. It's like, okay, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. I think that's really important to hear too. I'm glad you appreciate it. I was thinking maybe you were grateful that you had something in your safe, so that would be like, I'd be grateful for that. Just that would be the connection I would make. But what do I know? I don't have a safe. Any other reflections there? I like just talking about meditation sort of on that just very real and kind of practical way. And for a while there during this year and a half of Zoom, I've kind of come back to that as like once every couple months having a class where we just took questions about meditation, and maybe we'll do that soon.
You have a few hands.
Oh yeah, good. All right, great. Because I do have, something I can read, but I'm happy to. Yes, Mike F. Hi.
Yes, sir. Thanks. Mike, and I'm an alcoholic, and I don't even know if that's a proper thing to say in this context, but
Sure.
that's kind of how I encountered this, and so this is the first of these meetings that I've ever attended, and from what I'm seeing, it's very nice, and I appreciate your going through what I guess I would characterize as a guided meditation, Kevin, and and I do think it is helpful that it does kind of, it's a reminder to I mean, I don't know how much you get out of it, but because you have to think of what to say, but for those of us on the other end, I found it uh, guiding, to remind me that I aware of what my sensations are and all that sort of thing, and bring the focus back to the breath and all that sort of. It was helpful, and I appreciate you doing this. I really do, and I appreciate being welcomed in, and I hope to attend more of these. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Well, yeah, welcome. Yeah, identifying as a alcoholic is completely appropriate. This is meant to be a group for people in recovery. I guess I didn't really say that. It's become such a sort of, uh, we've been doing it so long now that I sort of forget to mention that maybe. I've been actually, this has been what I've been doing for this now, I guess 16 months something, is going through my book one breath at a time. So, and I'm going to get to something recovery oriented in a moment. Just let Dolores chime in here.
Okay, could you hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you. Thanks for asking that question, because I like silence when I meditate. And when I first started to meditate, I love this whole process. It's the Sangha word, I just love it. So when I first started to meditate, I wondered why you did that. And then I read about it, and then I remembered that you're teaching and you're leading and you're guiding and you're helping people. And that's a comfort. So I put the voice down real low and I hear your voice, but I prefer the silence. But I like the whole process of being with everybody.
Yeah.
The best way I could say it.
Well, I always figure if I'm going to ask people to make donations, I ought to give them something other than silence. But besides that, yeah, just to give you some idea of why I do that regularly is beyond that, which is really not my purpose, but is that if people are new to meditation, and I think that very often people are new to meditation when they're, it's one of the central things that I do is try to introduce people in recovery to meditation. So a lot of times there's people who are new. So that's the first thing I do it for. And then the second is just to kind of get us all together, kind of we're doing this together. And so there's a sense of, oh yeah. And yeah, I think that's exactly the right thing to do, is just turn the sound off if you don't want want it, any instruction. Yeah. So thanks. Yeah. So just to let people know who haven't been following along, when we got to the end of step 9 in One Breath at a Time, I realized that I had never addressed the promises that are in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous at the end of step 9. And so I switched over to my latest book, which is Buddhism and the 12 Steps Daily Reflections. My usual big job of promoting the book, which happened to cover the promises. And it looks like we've come to the last of the promises, for which I am grateful. And it's on so the way the book is ordered is that each month I kind of use the month as the step of the month. And so the promises are in September, the ninth month. So the last, so this is from September 23rd, and it says, what we could not do for ourselves. The language and the literature of the steps often brings us back to theistic concepts, such as God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. From a Buddhist standpoint, this doesn't quite make sense. So it's helpful to try another lens. If we substitute Dharma for God, we can tease some meaning from this statement. What this would mean is that by taking refuge in the Dharma and trying to live by its principles and practices, transformation is possible. One Buddhist teacher says, the Dharma takes care of those who take care of the Dharma. This has a similar tone to the Big Book's claim. With faith that will benefit from living in this way, we reject our habitual impulses and turn to the Dharma for guidance. Here we are encouraged to be present and accepting of things as they are. The Dharma also reminds us that everything is impermanent. This truth then reveals the unsatisfactory quality of life, that nothing lasts, nothing can be held on to. And yet, with this difficult revelation, we finally see the importance of caring and compassion over self-centeredness and blaming. The ourselves of the Big Book is that self-centered person. In aligning with the Dharma, we are turning away from that orientation and taking guidance and cues from the Buddha. This demands that we first study the Dharma enough to know what he taught, and then that we continually choose that guidance over the persistent craving to satisfy the, quote, self, unquote. Today, reflect on how your step work and Dharma practice have transformed your life. It's a nice reflection. Quick. So just to clarify a few things, this word Dharma is really a key word in Buddhist teachings, and it refers in the broadest sense to just the truth or the natural law. You could sort of think of it as the spiritual truth in a way, although it probably, we could say it includes, gravity or whatever, whatever laws there are. But it specifically refers then to the teachings of the Buddha. And so there are these 3 refuges in Buddhism. We take refuge in the Buddha, which is the teacher, but also the archetype of the enlightened mind. So in one sense, we're saying, oh, that's my teacher. I'm taking refuge in the Buddha and in his teachings. But I'm also saying that I'm taking refuge in my own capacity for being awake and for being mindful. So so that's like actually an effort. It's not just a I'm turning it over to the Buddha. It's more that I'm making a commitment to try to be present moment by moment. And then when we take refuge in the Dharma, it means that we try to really live in accordance with these teachings. So as I say, we have to sort of study the teachings and get a foundation in both the ethical and the meditative elements and the wisdom components, which, the wisdom components are, myriad, but particularly they point to, the suffering and compassion, to impermanence, to letting go, to, seeing through the illusion of self and ego. So that's why I say you kind of have to, it's important to sort of study and understand the Dharma, because we start to see that it's a challenge to live in accordance with these teachings. We have to kind of reflect moment by moment, like, what's a skillful thing to do in this moment? What's the wise thing to do in this moment? Or, in simplistic kind of contemporary terms, what would the Buddha do? Or what do the Buddha's teachings suggest? So that refuge, to me, the refuge in Dharma is really the essential refuge. But just to say, the third refuge, then, so we've got refuge in Buddha, refuge in Dharma. The third refuge is refuge in Sangha, which is the community. And so not to overlook the importance of community, and to think that we're just going to do all this on our own. So going back to this phrase, God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. So if we say the Dharma is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves, and as I'm sort of trying to make the point in here, and I think it takes a little while to get around to it. And I think that anybody who reads this is going to want to go back and read it again a little bit and connect the dots that I think I maybe could have connected them better in here. The idea that God, that doing for us what we could not do for ourselves, the sort of self being the grasping ego self. And if we turn our will over to the Dharma, then it's not self-centeredness. It's trying to let go of self, because part of living in accordance with the Dharma is to not be driven by self-centeredness or by ego, or even caught into the delusion that self exists, or that self can be satisfied in some way. So even saying all that, you can see, if it's not obvious, that I will say that that's a huge challenge, to say, oh, I'm going to step out of self, I'm going to not pursue my, self-centered wishes, which of course very much in alignment with the 12 steps. But on a Dharma level, it's asking us to really moment by moment watch how the mind clings to this idea of self, and particularly, I think, tries to satisfy the self, right? When we can, I don't know how much we can let go of, sort of feeling as if there's a self. That's a pretty advanced stage of practice that's described, but I think we can sort of notice the futility of trying to satisfy ourselves, the futility of always trying to make things work the way we want it to work. And because that goes back to step one, our powerlessness, it's about control. And so living in harmony with the Dharma, part of it is like each moment, like catching that, right? Oh, there I go again. Oh, what am I doing? Why am I getting frustrated? Oh, because I'm trying to satisfy self. I'm not, again, 12-step principle, I'm not accepting just the way things are, which is really a dharmic principle, the acceptance. It's not phrased that way in the Buddhist teachings, because it's phrased more about being non-reactive. Equanimity, is kind of the corresponding Buddhist concept to acceptance. I mean, equanimity is kind of a serenity, and according to serenity prayer, when we accept things we can't change, then we have serenity. So that's how I get to that idea that serenity and or that equanimity and acceptance are kind of, they're not equal. They're not synonyms, but they're talking about the same thing. They're getting at the same thing. But I will say, I mean, I'll go back just to this phrase. This is, this God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Is another one of the places, and there are pretty many places in the 12-step literature where there's sort of the suggestion that we have to depend on this outside being or outside force in order to stay sober, in order to be happy, in order to be not caught up in egocentricity. And again, from a Buddhist standpoint, or from somebody who's atheist or agnostic, that doesn't really make much sense. So we really do have to we either sort of just reject the language altogether, or we take it in and ask if there's some way of understanding this that could make sense. And it is interesting that this goes back to sort of my attempts to sort of capture the idea of power or higher power in Buddhism. And essentially it comes back to the power of karma. I'm just smiling because I'm realizing here I go into another, but it's okay. We'll get through this. It's, a complicated topic, and yet if we break it down into its simplest components, karma is our personal karma, which is maybe not even a good way to phrase it, because if there's no self, but karma has three components. It's the karma that's created by taking an action. It's the karma that's created by speaking or writing. And it's the karma that's created with thought. And so the process of waking up, whether it's spiritual awakening of the 12 steps or the spiritual awakening of Buddhism, is a process of waking up on those three levels, of creating positive or wholesome karma on those three levels. So with the 12 steps, this is, I kind of think of like Buddhism's over here, the 12 steps are over here. The 12 steps start with the action part and kind of move towards through the speech into the mind. Buddhism with meditation starts with the mental part. And then it doesn't really, but that's kind of the way Buddhism is kind of practiced in our culture. People learn to meditate, and then they start to realize, oh, I need to be more mindful in my speech, and I need to be more skillful and wholesome in my actions. So I think of them as kind of coming at this process from these two different ways, which is, it's an artificial construct, but captures something I think that most of us are familiar with. But it's the essential difference between a 12-step idea of God is doing it and a Buddhist view is that, okay, if God is just doing it, then I'm just sitting back and, whatever. waiting for God to step in, I guess, which of course isn't really even what the steps say. But the Buddhist view, or my view as a Buddhist, I'll say, is that we're saying that I am cooperating with the power of karma. Karma is an existing power which is activated by my thoughts, words, and deeds. And the way that it's activated depends upon the skillfulness or wholesomeness or unskillfulness or unwholesomeness of my thoughts, words, and deeds. So there's a power there that I'm participating. That's the difference here. And it's not really a difference, because everybody knows, like, a very common phrase in the 12-step world is, the 12 steps are a program of action. So even though it says God will do this for me and I turn my life over to God, nobody's just sits back and goes, oh, well, I'm done now because I did a prayer. That's not really how the 12 steps work. But it sounds like that's how it works, and that turns people off who haven't investigated further to realize, oh, actually, it's a program of karma, and it's the same thing. So now that I've resolved that potential conflict, no one has to worry anymore about separating the Dharma from the 12 steps. Well, I don't know how many times in the past 16 months I've gone through this description of the 3 elements of karma. I know it's a persistent theme for me, as well as pretty much everything I've said tonight are persistent themes. But it's the same reason we meditate every day, is we need to reflect on the same ideas over and over. Because our minds and our habits and our conditioning and our instincts are all pulling us away from the wise, from the skillful, from letting go. We're always getting pulled back in. It's, that why we keep going to meetings, why we keep showing up. Yeah, thank you. And someone's asking where they can make donations. Boy, that's the kind of person we really like. Yeah, but I was going to talk about that, about something that I got an invitation to be like part of this like teacher thing where people sign up to work with you, like, and you meet with the same group of people every week. And I was like, oh, that sounds nice. And then I looked through it, and it was like, oh, they have to pay $200 a month to do that. I was like, oh God, like, I'd like to get that money. That'd be nice. I just don't really like, and the thing what really bothered me, it was like, you have to pay $199 a month. I was like, really? Like, that's just playing games to me. Like, $199 a month, get to be with Kevin Griffin every week. Like, you guys get to do it for free or for whatever. Anyway, if anybody wants to, pay $200 a month to hang out with me, I'll tell you where we can set that up. Meanwhile, any thoughts or reflections tonight before I go have my dinner?
Yeah, hi, this is Mike.
Hey, Mike.
And hi, everybody. Thanks, Kevin. I'm glad you jumped into the kind of the Christian God part of the 12 steps again. It's good to hear, I think, for everyone, good to hear from me, because I struggled with that. I don't know if there's how many people here did, but like when I was in, and then I left for years and eventually had to come back. And it was really hard for me to get back into the 12 steps. I really didn't want to do it. I had to really force myself to do it. And I did. And I'm glad I did. I knew it would help, and it did. and I eventually found my way into Buddhist practice too. But there's a lot of wisdom in the 12 steps that if you can just get past the wording and kind of see through it, you can, there's just so much you can get out of working through the steps. And then, the groups like our sanghas, getting a sponsor, getting a home group, doing services. There's so much there. It's just, I wish the message could get out further to people who are, agnostics or atheists or humanists or whatever, that they can, that they can coexist and thrive in 12 steps too. Even without doing something like this, I think if you can just do the internal translation, that's what I had to do for a long time, just internally translate instead of God. I would just think of the universe or whatever, and it allowed me to kind of move on. And I was lucky I found groups that were really pretty easy to mix in. They didn't make me do a lot of prayers and stuff like that. We would like say the serenity prayer to end, and it was pretty good. But yeah, I like what was I thinking of? Living in harmony with the Dharma. That was a good way to put that. People think about it as living in harmony with God. I think when you think of it like that, that's kind of a good alternative way to think of it. So anyway, thanks as always, Kevin, for doing these, and nice to see everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks for speaking up. Nice to see you. And yeah, I too wish that more people could get past the the projections about what 12-step world is about, and a lot of that also gets filtered through a media lens that is very negative and doesn't understand how it really works, right? What really happens and what it's really about. People focus on on things that are not really what the program is. Like, you have to say you're an alcoholic, or you have to believe in God, or whatever. And it's like, no, what you have to do is like not drink or use, and don't lie and cheat and steal, just like basic moral guidelines and living wisely. So, Angela, I think you had your hand up first next.
It was Abigail, but I'll just go really quickly because it just popped into my mind. Yeah, sort of interesting. I guess I had a really nice conversation with one of my sponsees, and today, just really beautiful. She's on step 6 now, and it's all about watching our thoughts and just like really starting to tune in with like our interactions with people and what we're thinking about people, and so I just thought, as Mike was sharing about karma, like of the steps, and language for me has been that's why I was so, especially last year when I like really focused in on your teachings and really like weaving it in with my step work and getting just a lot of relief and just things really making sense for the first time, looking at things through the lens of Dharma, and recovery, and like doing it vice versa. But anyway, just karma and how like powerful it is, because now, and also my sponsee is working with a sponsee, and so it's just like we have these conversations about, what I speak to her about from my experience, and then she does that, and it's just like to see that chain and the karma that you're generating, and the acceptance and the love and the healing, it just like, and then I saw the Dharma, just freshly tonight. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. Nice to hear about that chain of causality. David J., hello.
Hi, Kevin, and hello to everyone in the Sangha. I'm calling, videoing from the island of Kauai. And, I've lived here a couple of years and had a real run-in with the local AA crowd because they're pretty fundamentalist, big book, dogmatic, get on your knees and pray. And if you don't, you're going to die an alcoholic, which is the AA version of going to hell, in my opinion. And, I struggled with this idea of God in the big book literature before coming here, but I found various sanghas and various AA groups to hang out with who, look at things different ways. I appreciate your guidance today in the discussion of karma in place of God. I'm going to have to study up on that one real well. I don't quite get it. I am one of those people that really doesn't resonate with all of the Christianity and all of the AA literature. And I've been listening to you off and on for a long time, trying to sort of replace the verbiage and look at it from a different perspective. And that's helped me quite a lot over the years, but I still sort of shake my head a little bit. From what little I know about the Buddhist perspective of the promises is that, yeah, they sound great, man. They're just like, everything's going to be wonderful. If you just do what we tell you and you just stop drinking, man, it's just like, wow, everything's just perfect. And do we think these, promises are extravagant? We think not, is what they say. And my first thought is, yeah, I think they are. If for no other reason, yeah, some of them have come true in my life and in sobriety, and I'm grateful for that. But shit don't stay the same, and things change, and sometimes these things happen and then they go away, and it's like, it almost seems like a disservice to people to say, hey, if you just dogmatically follow this book, man, you're gonna just like, all of these things are gonna happen and you're just gonna be perfect, is what I hear. It's like, you got the promises in front of you. It's like, wow, cool. But I haven't seen it. So I don't know if it's a commentary or a question. What are your remarks in response? I suppose, I don't know. I'm sure you've heard this stuff a lot, maybe even from me.
I don't know. We have never really talked about the promises like this before, but I will say that, when I think of where they show up in the step process, that probably a lot has changed in many or most people's lives if they've done, gotten clean, sober, and they've done some kind of process of letting go around step 3, kind of, and then the inventory, and trying to let go then even deeper around so-called character defects, kind of trying to work with and let go of the things that come up in the inventory, and then making amends. I think I would say that it seems to me that a lot can happen by then. I don't know if I want to characterize it as like things I'd promise are going to happen, but I think that if you go through that process, that it wouldn't be surprising if you were finding that your life was pretty significantly different. It was for me, and I'm sure it has been for a lot of people. But yeah, there may be some risk too, in sort of like over promising. I don't know. Certainly, I would agree that. Certainly everything is impermanent, and so yeah, and some of the promises. We've been talking about them for the last couple of months, so I'm not going to go through them all again. But just some of them, I think, are more, natural manifestations of the process, and some of them are a little bit. Particularly the financial insecurity, the fear of financial insecurity. It's like, that's a tough one. But I don't know, maybe that's just me. I'm fearful. I kind of need to get off. Mike, is there something you wanted to just chime in there?
Oh, just quick, Kevin. Yes, I just wanted to say that, I think you're right on the money that, not that my opinion matters too much, but, when I hear that phrase, I often think that what they're talking about, or what often people hear, is what's often characterized in AA meetings as the Santa Claus version of God.
Mhm.
And that that's not what this is about at all.
Right.
And it's important to remember, I think, that this book was put together in a very short period of time under extreme duress. There is a great book called Writing the Big Book, which you've
Oh,
probably
really?
heard of.
No, I
And
haven't.
it's a wonderful book.
That
And it
sounds
talks
cool.
about how there was a guy named Hank Parkhurst who pushed back against this whole idea of making this a religious program. And so there was that tension from the very first. And but as you were saying, I think when you think of it in terms of that whole concept of no self,
Mhm.
that my autonomic nervous system is running this body. I am not running this body.
Right.
And so whether I like it or not, it is doing for me what I cannot do. And that is the way this whole thing works.
That's
Thanks
true.
a million. It's been
Yeah.
a great meeting. Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for coming. And I'll be back on Tuesday and starting the last 3 steps. Then gonna actually start with just the introduction to the last 3 steps in one breath at a time. And I will mention, I see that Angela put up the information about the Southern Dharma retreat, which is September 1st to the 6th. It'll be my first in-person residential retreat since the pandemic started. And they just opened for registration on the 1st of July. And they only have, I think, 20 spots, and it's probably going to get filled up fast. A lot of you I know are really not near North Carolina, so you might not want to go out. But if you're anywhere on the East Coast and you're interested in coming on a retreat, you should check it out. And we're going to have a West Coast retreat in October that we'll be letting you know about very shortly. We're just working out the details. And we'll let you know that within the next couple of weeks. So, happy, as we say in Buddhism, Interdependence Day. Everything is interrelated and interdependent. So we are not independent of anything. We are all intertwined. So, which is nice because that means we are all together. So thank you for being here. Have a great weekend. And I will see you